Javi, do not put a body on the rocks. Hold south of the jetty. Red flag still up. Rip line is setting hard into the channel. Harbor police are inbound to you. I had my hand on the RWC's kill tether when the call came through, thumb hooked in the loop like a promise. The south swell had been building all morning, long lunges of water rolling in from some storm 1,000 miles away and deciding to end their trip on our doorstep. The Mission Bay Channel was a throat. The Pacific had found it and was trying to swallow. My tower, Tower 13 Mission Beach, watched the whole argument like a referee with a rescue board. I kept the whistle around my neck and the megaphone at my knee. I kept my heart where I could reach it. Copy, I said into the radio. South Tower holding. No bodies on the rocks. RWC staged, fins on. I looked down the beach. The blackball flag snapped at its own temper. The shoreline was pocked where rip currents grabbed at sand and pulled it backward in ropes. And the South Jetty wore a collar of white water like an old dog shaking itself off. My name is Javier Morales. Javi to anyone with sand in their shoes. 28, San Diego Fire Rescue Lifeguard. Sign 2, Mission Beach District. They pay me to find quiet in rooms that forgot they had any. Harbor Police to Mission South, the other voice said. Steady. Film of salt on it. Clear like someone who learned how to talk on radios by talking to water first. We're HP 28, 2 minutes from the channel mouth. Do not let anyone onto the jetty. We'll stand off at the safe water mark. He said, do not like a blessing. He said everything else, like a handrail. I could work with both. Copy, HP 28, I said. We're eyes on. The beach had opinions. A father lifted his toddler, then looked at the waves, like they'd gotten personal with him. 2 teenagers kept arguing with physics out by the swim line. A surf school instructor tried to bundle his foam boards into patience. A woman in a sun hat held her phone like she could film herself a safer ocean. I blew 2 quick whistle bursts at the teens, the kind that says, come in now, without yelling that you love them. They pretended not to hear, which is a kind of hearing. I dropped from the tower, ran the soft sand like it was mine, and stepped into the RWC's saddle as if my hips remembered the shape from another life. The ski idled with a purr we train ourselves to trust. The rescue sled behind slapped the water twice, like a wet dog. The red flag at the tower said what it always says when the day decides to lean on it. No swimming, dangerous conditions. We blackballed the zone earlier, no surfboards within the swim area, but the channel didn't care about signs. The channel cared about angles and timing. South Tower, you good? Dennis, my tower partner for the day, asked over the handheld, breath coming in like he'd sprinted the stairs. I keep being, I said. I was kidding the first time I said that months ago. It stuck because it felt like the right size. I was half a minute from killing the engine and swimming out to redirect the teenagers when the radio cracked a different syllable of the day. Mission South. Vessel in distress. White Catalina 22. Engine failure inside the channel. Drifting toward North Jetty. 3 POB. Repeating 3 persons on board. Do not attempt tow with RWC. HP 28 will take the line. Copy. White Catalina 22. 3 aboard. Drifting, I said, already backing the ski into deeper water. We're eyes on the north line. I'll hold the swim boundary and keep surfers off the channel. But the part I didn't see coming, I would say later, I showed up 5 seconds after I pretended I had time to think. The family with the sun hat had decided their photo needed perspective. The dad had his sneakered foot on the first jetty stone, the toddler now wriggling like a fish with feelings. I cut the engine, hopped off into knee-deep water, and let the next set roll past my waist. Sir, I shouted, laying the please into my voice in a way that made it a do not with manners. Stay off the rocks. Do not climb. Come to me. I kept my hands open, palms out, the way people trust. He paused, like pride had to go through a checklist. The toddler squawked. A boom of white hit the first stones. Spray leapt. Somewhere a teenager yelped because the ocean had corrected him. Mission South, came a second voice, lower close. This is HP 28. We have the Catalina in sight. 2 adults, 1 teen, jib-luffing. Do not put a swimmer in the channel. We'll be there in 30 and throw a heaving line. Keep the swim area clear. His voice had that deliberate calm you want to meet in tents, on tarmacs, in ER bays, in the rooms where systems decide to break. I didn't know his face yet, but my chest had already chosen to recognize him. Copy, I said. Swim area clear. I jogged the family back down the beach, the small hot steps of a man trying to carry both his embarrassment and his kid, and let them feel like they'd made the smart call themselves. That counted as a victory on days like this. Teen surfers, boards on the beach. Now, I called into the megaphone. Blackball still in effect. Do not paddle to the swim line. One rolled his eyes so hard he could have found the North Star with it and dragged his foam board up the sand with the world's heaviest sigh. The other smiled apologetically and did as asked. I nodded at both. People in Lifeguard Red don't need to be right. We need to be effective. Down the throat of the channel, the little sailboat skittered side on like a crab, keel looking for a friend it didn't want to find. A harbor police boat, blue hull, white cab, light bar ready, came bow out of the bay. Took the chop at an angle that said, We respect you, but we do not fear you, and bled speed near the safe watermark where the swell turned math into personality. The loudhailer thumped with its own gravity. Catalina 22, this is Harbor Police, the voice I now wanted to catalog called. Do not try to anchor. Do not attempt to start your engine. Turn your bow to port, face west, and we'll throw you a line. Count 1,000 between waves. The man at the tiller scrambled. The woman, hat that wasn't made for weather, grabbed the cabin edge. The teen kept looking between his parents, like he wanted to be older than he was, and needed permission not to be. The boat yawed. The next pulse of water pushed. The bow turned 2 degrees shy of dignity. An HP 28 slid across their face like a teacher who knows how to catch paper airplanes before they find eye level. Stand by, the voice said, and the heaving line arced. A good throw, clean and kind, over the Catalina's nose. The teen caught it like he'd been practicing alone in his room, then handed it to his dad, because sometimes the right job is letting other people keep the story they need. Cleat it, figure 8. Don't tie it hard, the voice added, and his tone did a strange, useful thing to my ribs, made them better at their job. I didn't know I'd be hearing that tone again in my kitchen, telling me to let the pasta water be ready before my sauce gets pretentious. The Catalina settled into the boat's wake. HP 28 eased power, the swell shoved, and for a heartbeat the whole mess looked like it would go fine. That was the beat the ocean broke. Wait, don't miss this detail, I shouted at Dennis as if he were in my head, because that's what we say to each other when a picture looks like it's trying to be honest and we can see the lie. The Catalina's keel kissed a buried rock near the jetty. The boat did a small, ugly pirouette. The teen lost his stance. He spilled over the combing like a dropped word. His head hit the water with that sound I hate, soft and final and unbothered by your plans. Man overboard, I said to nobody, and to Dennis and to the god of radios. My fins were already on. My hand slapped the tether. The RWC coughed awake under me. I swung the ski into the next trough, counted 1,000 with a prayer, and punched the throttle between pulses as if I could convince physics to wait its turn. HP 28, to mission south, the voice cut. Now that knife of command that makes rooms obey. Do not cross our line. We'll block the boat. Take the swimmer. Copy, I said, and the word meant a lot more than I could make it mean in any other context. I cut the RWC alongside the boy just as he came up coughing salt and sound. His eyes were wide with the kind of fear that would like to be memorized and thrown away at the same time. Hey, man, I said, voice doing its ancient trick. The one I learned from the guards, who taught me everything I use and everything I pretend I invented. You're okay. Hands on the sled. Kick once. Breathe. He grabbed with that shaking, desperate grip that still somehow manages to be polite. I rolled him onto the sled in one move that wasted 0 letters. He gagged out a wave he hadn't wanted. I held his shoulder with my knuckles and counted with my mouth. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. His breathing found my metronome. I looked past him and saw HP 28 slide their hull into the small gap between the Catalina and the jetty like a friend taking a punch for you. The boat's operator, cap brim low, life jacket zipped, jaw set, kept his throttle hand like it was praying, not begging. Mission south. Status? Dennis called. Swimmer secured on sled, conscious. Breathing, I said. Watched the next set run the rocks with its white teeth out, and timed the ski for the back of its second, easier breath. I dropped the boy off into the arms of a public who had suddenly decided they know how to be village. The mother latched onto him and made air into sound, and then apologized to air for being used. The father shook while pretending his hands only shake for coffee. I didn't tell him it was okay to cry. I told him where the medics were. People can build their own grace if you hand them a hammer that fits. Our HP 28 to mission south, the voice, the harbor cop, came in softer, the emergency's hardest syllable over for now. We've got the Catalina under control. We'll tow them into Quivira. Do not let anyone onto the jetty. We've got wash off our stern. Copy, I said. My chest wanted to find his face now, the way you want to put a name to a bird you keep seeing in your yard. HP 28, thanks for the throw. Good catch on the kid, he said, and the compliment landed like a hand on the back of my neck in a kitchen. I stood next to the sled as the family did their after-storm inventory. The boy looked at me with that half-smile teenagers allow, eyes coming down from too much adrenaline. Thanks, he said. I thought I could jump back on. I have that thought in the shower sometimes, I said. You caught water you didn't need to catch. It happens. And then the phone rang, I could say. Because it did, my handheld chirped with the tone that means something small trying to be big. Mission south. Be advised. Paddleboarder outside the channel. Drifting south with the longshore current. Attempting to cross into the surf zone, Lifeguard dispatch sent. HP 28 is towing. Do not request assistance unless the boarder breaks the line. Copy, I said. Eyes on. Do not cross into surf zone, boarder. I cupped my hands to my mouth and called to the thin vertical line of human on a board out beyond the flags. Stay on your belly. Do not stand. Angle south, ride the rip out and across, then come in with whitewater. Sometimes that works. Sometimes the ocean hears you. Sometimes it pretends it's wearing headphones. He stayed on his knees, which was better than heroism, and I thanked every instructor who had ever thought to teach belly first to someone with a rented board and a brand new desire to try not to die. HP 28. To Mission South, came the voice again. Now that everyday calm that people mistake for laziness until they need it. We're taking the Catalina into Quivira. We'll be back for a south standoff in 9. Do not put someone on the jetty. I saw a couple eyeing the rocks. Copy, I said, and looked. 2 tourists had found the part of the jetty that always looks easy from far away. They had the posture of people about to be taught. I blew the whistle this time, long and meaningful. They stopped with their sandals in their hands, like the ocean had arrested them. By noon, the swell had found its morning rhythm, sets in 3s, long lulls, current tugging south like a polite thief. We got 4 rescues, 3 assists, 1 dog that believed in currents but not leashes, and a grandma who wanted to walk right up to the waterline with her sneakers on and tell me about Daytona like it was a medical credential. I gave her shade and water and the kind of attention that keeps people from turning their days into problems that require numbered incident reports. And in between all that, the harbor police boat made its shapes, standing off outside the safe water mark, shepherding boaters who thought the right speed across the channel was the speed of their marriage, reminding fishermen that rocks don't love a park and fish day when the ocean is auditioning for another name. Twice more, the boat's operator's voice found me on the radio, like a familiar footprint on the stairs, once to let me know they had a kayaker who'd underestimated the current and gotten theology about it, once to tell me they had diver flags popping up near the Mission Bay jetties that shouldn't be where they were. Each time, he said, do not like a door held open. Each time I marked his steadiness away for later. Wait, don't miss this, Dennis said when I came back up the tower after helping a surf school herd their ducklings, pushed the soaked hair out of my eyes, and reached for the binoculars. I'll sail north outside, trying to shoot the gap. White hull, amateur hour. The fiberglass sloop, impatience minted on its bow, was aiming from outside the north side of the jetties to inside the bay at an angle only physics could forgive. The swell had punched itself higher by half a foot. The wind had leaned up like it remembered a thing it had to do. 2 people in deck chairs looked like they thought pictures were happening. One person at the helm looked like he'd been told he was good at everything his whole life. The channel line was red, yellow, red on the nav markers, and the sloop had chosen to treat that as decoration. Mission south to HP 28, I said, already anticipating the answer. North approach, white sloop, attempting diagonal. Request you intercede. HP 28, copy, came the voice. Do not move off the swim line. We'll block their bow. They did with the same easy precision as earlier. A bow wave in the right place, a loudhailer script that had been sanded by decades of meetings with idiots and good people having bad days, and the tone that says, we aren't angry, we are physics. The sloop turned, sulked into waiting, and found the right timing like someone was finally counting out loud for them. I watched the operator at the wheel of HP 28 and felt that same small, faithful thing in my chest. There you are. At 2, dispatch rotated crews. Dennis went for food. Tiffany took the north tower. Jose came to my south. The sun did that peculiar Southern California compassion. It got warm without being cruel, and tourists arrived to act like they hadn't heard of rip currents on purpose. HP 28 did a patrol out by Zuniga Jetty and reported back that the swell outside was bigger, meaner, and in a mood. We kept the red flag up because prices don't fall just because someone asks. The day could have ended with that rhythm. Rescue, scold, smile, repeat, and it would have been a full enough story. But the truly shocking part waited for evening, because San Diego likes to pretend it's drama-free between t-shirts. At 6, the wind shifted a hair, and the swell got organized again in the worst way. The kind of set that makes every lifeguard stand on their toes and pretend they weren't going to anyway rolled in. A pulse that screamed long period with its whole chest. 2 teen boys, ecstatic at still being alive after their day, decided to take one more body surf attempt at the edge of the channel, because that is what teenage boys do to make adults relevant. One got a ride. The other did a tumble, and a rip took him sideways toward the south jetty with the specific intention of starring in a story. South Tower, swimmer in the rip, Tiffany called from the north. Do not let him find the rocks. On it, I said, and that wasn't a hero line. That was a map. I slid the RWC into water, counted the set. 1, 2, 3 bigger, and ran the trough under the last crest like I'd drawn it the night before. The kid looked up and found me with that little kid part of his face that he hadn't lost yet. The rip tightened, sucked him inward. A wave he didn't earn broke on his back. He went under like a prayer with bad timing. Stay down, I said to the wave like it could hear me, which it can't, and come up to the boy, which he did, wide eyes, hair plastered, mouth open. Hey, I said, like conversation could change physics. Hands on the sled, 2 kicks, breathe with me. He grabbed, I locked my arm under his shoulder, and then I looked to my right, because the ocean told me to. Some guy with a GoPro harness had climbed halfway up the jetty to get his epic. Legs braced, face turned to me, doing that thing with his arms that says I am filming myself being brave for my future regret. A set rose. The rocks were wet. The air was unhelpful. And I knew, because the day had scheduled this, that the wave was going to slap the rocks and try to take the GoPro guy with it. Mission south to HP 28. I didn't need to finish because the harbor police boat had already moved. Bow facing where the problem would be, stern in the clean. Light bar off because light doesn't help a wave, listen. The operator's voice came without the radio now. Carry across water like certain kinds of truth do. Do not go on the rocks. Do not jump. Stay where you are. It wasn't loud. It was clear. The GoPro guy's knees shook in a way even his camera could not recut. He retreat scrambled backward with the awkward grace of someone choosing to stay alive. The wave slammed the jetty, a sheet of white hissed back in, and a small, angry rainbow pretended to have been worth it. I tucked the boy onto my sled and kicked out of the rip at an angle like I was trying to apologize to geometry. When I dropped him at the shallows, his friend cried real tears and pretended there was salt in his eyes. We let him have both stories. You good? The harbor police operator asked me once. The light got gold and the swell found a softer adjective. He'd brought HP 28 south of the line again, engine purring like a thought you want to keep repeating. I keep being, I said, and laughed and felt ridiculously like someone else laughed with me inside my chest. I'd never met this man's face. I'd be able to pick his voice out of a room faster than my own after tonight. He cut power, drifted closer along the boundary, and we finally saw each other almost enough to satisfy whatever my brain had been trying to do all day. He was early 30s, Asian American, Chinese and something else maybe, jaw set in a way that spoke of restraint as a superpower. Eyes lit with that, I know what, look you develop if you've done nights on any water. Ryan Chen was stenciled small on the jacket flap above his badge. He lifted 2 fingers in greeting, a boat version of a seatbelt clicking. Ryan, he said, tapping his chest. HP 28. Javi, I said, tapping mine. SDFD lifeguards. Thanks for keeping the rocks boring. That's my specialty, he said, and his smile did the thing smiles do just before anyone calls them that. Small, earned, functional. Do not let my boss hear you compliment a rock. Copy, I said, and we both laughed like the day had given us permission. Sunset let the pier glow like it had been rehearsing for a film. We had an hour of possible peace scheduled by weather. Then the fog decided to audition for a subplot, sliding over Point Loma like a blanket you can't tell is warm yet. Dispatch moved the red flag to night operations. HP 28 swapped one deckhand. Tiffany logged our day to make it a story the city could hold. But here's the choice I didn't want, the night said, reaching into its sleeve and pulling out the thing that turns competence into love. Mission south, dispatch called. Report of a diver overdue, Point Loma kelp line. Last seen near Red Buoy 4 at dusk, but he lost visual, came up alone. HP 28 and Lifeguard Boat 1 are responding. Do not commit an RWC past the surf line outside the channel. My stomach started drawing the map faster than my eyes could. The kelp beds were a world of their own, beautiful, dark, full of polite secrets, and utterly uninterested in anyone else's plans. Boat 1 would be out of Mission Bay in 5. HP 28 had a shorter run. Do not commit an RWC outside the channel is a rule we only break if we want to start filling out paperwork we never want our friends to sign. Copy, I said, and tried to keep the do not as a sacrament, not handcuffs. We'll light the channel and hold south. HP 28 to Mission South. Ryan, now I had a name and the radio made it taste like I'd been allowed to keep it. We'll take the outside. Boat 1 will clear the inside and run you a standoff light. Do not send an RWC out. If the diver surfaces inside the line, we'll bend them to you. Copy, I said. I hate this. Me too, he said, like a catechism for people who love their jobs in the ways that hurt right. Still with me? Right here, I said, because the phrase had grown a spine. We stood there, me on the sand at the south tower, Ryan at his helm, Boat 1's red glow making a suggestion to the fog, and we waited. You don't save divers with hope or spotlights. You save them with probability and circles. They had patterns for this, expanding square, creeping line, sector search, math that pretends it's poetry to keep people polite. We kept the channel safe, which is a different kind of saving even when your chest wants the movie. Wait, don't miss this detail. Boat 1 cut in. We have bubbles, east edge of Red Buoy 4, possible surfacing in your line. Do not move the RWC. HP 28, stand by to push a light. Copy. You don't hear Ryan breathe on the radio, but somehow his yes always brought air with it. A head broke the surface, arms flapping like a man who had remembered he had invented arms earlier. He spat his regulator and shouted something that died under the fog. HP 28 moved like a thought and had him in their hands with the motion of people who'd study this moment the way others study sonatas. He climbed onto their swim step like a person promised he would live. He rolled onto his back, stripped off his mask, and cried because salt is already there and because you can leave certain rooms only one way. Ryan's face, what I could see of it in Boat One's light, did what water operators' faces do when they are measuring the distance between someone else's heartbeat and their own. He nodded once at me from 70 yards, like he'd meant it all day. We closed the channel at 8, night swell still rude, fog making everything taste like the inside of an unfinished thought. We put the signs up, channel closed, dangerous conditions, no swimming. People read them and still asked us questions. That's part of the job, too. HP 28 ran one last outside patrol and then nestled near the safe watermark with the casual intimacy of a city that goes to bed in pieces. Mission South. Ryan said on the local channel we were definitely not supposed to use for commerce. We'll hold for 15 more, then back to Shelter Island to fuel. Do not give the rocks a show. Copy, I said. Coffee after? Costera, if you want to pretend we're fancy. OB, if you want to pretend we're not. He laughed, a small sound the radio carried like contraband. I'm on until 2300. OB Pier works. Do not tell anyone you caught me smiling on channel. Copy, I said. Mum is the word. We broke the beach down the way lifeguards always do. Stacked cones, stowed boards, logged rescues. Told Tiffany our favorite ridiculous lines so her report could carry them into the part of the city that wants proof we care. The fog came and went like it couldn't decide who it liked. I sat on the sled and listened to the hiss that water makes against water when it's tired and happy about it. He stood where the wet meets the dry 15 minutes later. In Harbor Police blue with the life jacket unzipped and the posture of someone who hadn't yet told his body the shift was over. Up close, Ryan's face was the thing my chest had promised me. Alive, tired, alert. That slight crease between his eyes that says I have a spreadsheet of compassion somewhere in my brain. He lifted his hand and I took it. It wasn't a shake. It was a count of the day in bones. You good? He asked. I keep being. I said, you? Right here, he said, and there it was again. The answer that turned a radio check into a ritual. We didn't hug because our shirts were committed to salt. We did the thing water people do when we get to keep being a little. He tilted his forehead to mine for one beat. PG-13, consent. The line you only cross if you have a hall pass from everything else. Nobody took a picture. The ocean pretended not to notice, which is the best blessing she gives. We went to OB and ate fish tacos with way too much lime and exactly enough heat. He told me he'd grown up in National City, that his mom was a nurse and his dad drove a truck, that the ocean had been his second language and radio's his third. I told him my mom taught first grade and my abuela had called me a lifeguard since I was 6 because I kept rescuing beetles from bowls of water. We compared scars, not because we were macho, but because scars are indexes, and indexes tell you which chapters matter. He'd lost a friend on a boat years ago. I'd almost lost me at 15, caught in a rip at Imperial Beach until a stranger with a red can told me how to count. He said he got into this work to be that voice. I told him I got into this work to be that hand. The sentence tasted right in both of our mouths. We wrote a rule instead of a plan, because that's what people with radios do when we don't want to jinx anything. When long period south swells make the channel talk, he texts here. When red flag goes up and my tower fills with foiled plans, I text on. He keeps a spare spacer in his medical kit with a note that says, for the kid who names it. Because there's always some asthmatic punk who gives their inhaler a name. I keep a Sharpie in my sled bag because labels are love after dark. He says, do not, and I hear stay alive so we can keep this. I say copy, and he hears I will. A week later, a tourist tried to drive a rented Duffy boat down the surf line like it was a parade route, and we rearranged their understanding of rules with kindness. 2 weeks later, a sea lion decided a surfboard was a lover, and we tried to explain consent to him with pool noodles and dignity. Every time Ryan's voice walked into a room I was guarding, my hands found competence faster. Every time I said, hold the line into mine, his shoulders put down something I think he'd been carrying since January. On a Tuesday with light wind and a sky that wanted to be easy, we stood on the jetty, the safe part, not the part you make posters from, and watched the sun die behind Point Loma in a completely legal way. Pelicans did that perfect triangle glide like math finally remembered it used to be grace. A couple threw bread at gulls and learned why no one does that twice. He wore a cap that made his eyes look like they had their own light. I touched the brim and he let me, which in our language counts as a vow. Still with me? He asked, not because he didn't know, but because the answer is the point. Right here, I said. The ocean finished a sentence for us and then went quiet. People think our work is whistles and sirens and planks and pumps and blue lights. It is. It's also names and rules, and the way to not can be a lifeline if you say it on time and mean it with your whole voice. Sometimes the safest place in San Diego isn't behind a jetty or inside a boat. Sometimes it's the inch between two foreheads while the red flag still lifts at your back. The moment a city lets you keep a piece of quiet because you've proven you know what to do with it. The next south swell will come. It always does. Someone will try to turn a sign into art and forget it has a job. Someone will name their inhaler something brave. The channel will pretend it's a throat again. Harbor Police will make physics look like manners. He'll keep rocks boring. I'll keep Water honest. He'll ask, "You good?" And I'll say, I keep being, "We'll hold the day where it needs holding. Red flag up? Channel marked, yes."